How much does tesamorelin cost? Now, peptides are pricey based on how you look at it, and anything in health is going to be an expense. And so I'm going to talk to you about the differences between like Agripta, the pharmaceutical peptide, tesamorelin, and I'm going to talk to you about compounding pharmacies and compare it to research-based peptides. And so in this video, what you're going to learn is this worth the investment? If so, how can you maximize your investment in the safest way possible without relying on research-based peptides? And I'm going to show you exactly how to get there and where to find it. So stick around and let's jump in. So first of all, why is a peptide, like a single peptide called tesamorelin, also known as Agripta, which is the pharmaceutical name for it, how can that possibly cost, on average, $37,000 a year? Well, anytime you have the big pharma comes in and they run a substance, whether that's vitamin C or it's a small molecule drug or a peptide, even if it's a natural agent, what they want to do is they want to run it through double-blind clinical trials, and then they want to put a patent on that so that they can get an ROI, because many drugs cost upwards of $1 billion to bring to the market. Something like tesamorelin, which has been on the market for about 12 years, there's enormous amounts of resources that went into running it through all the clinical trials for HIV patients who had lipodystrophy. And then what the pharmaceutical companies want to do is they want to earn their money back. And just like any good capitalist would want to do, they'd want to look at the marketplace and say, okay, how much value does this drug create relative to anything else that's on the market? And is the market large enough where we can actually have a profit that our shareholders will love and our CEO will love? And so they're basing decisions not necessarily on just the effectiveness of whatever drug they're testing, but they're also looking at the marketplace. And that's really the driver, because what happens is there's about 10 times more money that gets spent on marketing the drug versus the research and the production of the molecule. And so tesamorelin, one of the reasons why it is so expensive when you use Agripta is because it has gone through that entire FDA approval process. Now, one of the things that we found, like rate peptide that I've been speaking about a lot lately, is called ACE-031. Now, this is another peptide that the pharmaceutical companies had taken, and they'd done the research. They're running it through clinical trials for boys who had Duchenne's muscular dystrophy. They found, yes, it is very effective. Yes, it's incredibly safe. And the third criteria when anything gets FDA approval is, and yes, it's better than probably anything that was on the market or is on the market, but why did it not become known, and why is it not FDA approved? Well, when the pharmaceutical companies, when they did the market analysis, they realized there's not a large enough subset of people with Duchenne's muscular dystrophy, and therefore they stopped the research. They pulled out. And so this is one of the reasons why we have compounding pharmacies that can make these natural agents that exist in your body. ACE-031, for example, it's a myostatin inhibitor, and so it activates follistatin so you can build muscle easier. And it's actually very effective. They actually did a study on postmenopausal women who had adiposity on their thighs, and they found that it reduced the fat on their thighs by 9% and increased muscle mass by 4%. over the course of 28 days. I mean, that's unheard of. So tesamorelin, if you go to a compounding pharmacy, where usually we'll put tesamorelin with ipamorelin, or we'll have different peptide stacks, what you'll find is the cost is reduced down to a fraction of the $37,000 a year for using Agripta, for example. And so hopefully that gives you an understanding is, compounding pharmacies aren't out there marketing tesamorelin or any of the other peptides that they're producing. In some cases, I guess they do, but that's, technically the pharmacies are supposed to just stay in their lane and make really good pharmaceutical grade vitamins, supplements, nutrients, drugs, anything they're making. A substance becomes a drug when it has gone through that FDA approval, which is why on this channel you don't hear us making claims about treating specific diseases or conditions with peptides, because frankly we're not. We're health optimizers. And that's my purpose in building this ageless future community, is I want you guys to have the ability to optimize your health so you can look, feel, and perform your best at any age. The ageless future, it's a mindset of thinking, how can I get healthier every year? And it's really hard to get to that mindset when you just feel like there's this financial barrier in front of you in obtaining any of these peptides. So what you'll typically find is that tesamorelin from a compounding pharmacy depends on the pharmacy we use, which also depends on the state that you're in. And there's variances. Sometimes prices go up or down based on the quantity and it's supply and demand laws of economics. But generally speaking, it's about 80% less to upwards of 90% less expensive than what a Grifta would be. I mean, we have patients who can do one of our premium programs. It's not our highest tier, and they can get all their peptides, all your medical care, your nutritional care, your concierge health integrator, your fitness advisor, and you can get that and come to our Ageless Future events for the price of a Grifta over the course of a year. Maybe even less than that, depending on what you need. If we have a regenerative medicine, it may be roughly the same. So if you look at the value that you can get by using compounding pharmacies, yes, you save a ton of money, but you get that care and personalized medicine that I believe is a central feature in healthcare. I say our company, Ageless Future, is a company that's a hospitality company that specializes in healthcare, because that's at the core of everything that we do. And in order to create that hospitality, we want to make sure that this is affordable for people of all income levels. And yes, it is an investment. And this is where I'm going to ask you the question, like, what's more expensive, eating fast food every day or cooking your own organic food? And a lot of people, they'll say, Regan, the organic food is too expensive. It's too expensive for me to get a gym membership, even though Planet Fitness is like $10 a month or something ridiculous. But it's really how you start looking at what's expense. Now, I look at poor health as being the biggest expense that anybody can have in their life. If you walk around with chronic pain, you're going to make less money, you're going to have less enjoyable time doing the physical activities you love, you'll have a lower quality of life. Generally speaking, if you have chronic disease, just by removing all chronic diseases from your body, as a 67-year-old, you can add 22 and a half more years to your life. Now imagine how much more time that gives you over 2 decades. That's when you have the most value to offer to society, which is when you could create the most wealth. And so when you look at these programs or when you're looking at investing, yes, you may see that, I can get research use peptides, Regan, and it's about 20% less expensive than the compounding pharmacies that require a doctor's prescription, and there's a lot more work. But I can tell you, in these research use only peptides, first of all, you've got to qualify to be a research facility, and many of you aren't. And secondarily, they're not purified the same way. They don't have the same regulations and standards. Yes, there are very good pharmacies and laboratories out there making research peptides, but we've always stayed in the lane of we only want to use peptides that come from licensed 503A and 503B pharmacies, so that integrity, the purity, and the quality is there. Because some of these research-based peptides, there can be contaminants, there can be heavy metals, there can also be one of the biggest risks, which in my opinion is more expensive, is when you have a peptide that's a fragment of the peptide you think you're using. So we want to apply the right inputs, and some of these research peptides just don't meet the quality standards. So respect your body, be willing to invest in it. It requires a mindset shift where you think, okay, what is the investment that continually yields the highest ROI or the highest return on my investment? And what I've seen year after year in my own personal life is when I invest in my health, everything gets better. I've seen that with clients. I have one of my clients, Charlie, who runs a company called Predictable Profits. And he's been able to show in the clients that he coaches, he's an executive coach, he's one of the greats. And he says that clients who invest in their health, they always have at least a 5 times ROI on their investment. So that's where if you invest $20,000 in your health, that yields you $100,000, as long as assuming I did the math right, which that's a pretty easy number. So it's a worthwhile investment. And you don't have to spend a fortune on tesamorelin through the pharmaceutical grade, because we are using pharmaceutical grade through a compounding pharmacy, which the pharmacists that we vet out, they have very specific skill sets. They're very talented. They also have the quality standards, and there is that licensing, that medical oversight where inspectors are looking at the facilities so that you know that you're getting the best quality of peptides that you could possibly get on the planet through Ageless Future. So if you're ready to dive in, you want to know if tesamorelin or any other peptides might be right for you, or if you're just looking to optimize your health and transform it, go to agelessfuture.com. My team there, they'll get the right blood labs for you, the right diagnostic tests, and then we will help you build out the peptide protocols from compounding pharmacies that will yield you the highest level of return on your investment when it comes to your health. And I've also provided a free gift for you, my book, The Peptide Blueprint. You can click the link down in the show notes, and I hope you enjoy it. Thanks so much for being part of this great community. I'm Regan Archibald. I'll see you in the next video.